Okay, so hi everybody. We're doing today Parshat Truma, a wonderful parsha. Every parsha is actually wonderful, but the Haftara here is super special. Parshat Truma starts is the first of the 4 parshiot portions of the week that we deal with, learn all the instructions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Am Yisrael and the building of the sanctuary, the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert. So Parshat Truma is the first parsha where we get the instructions of how to build the Mishkan and the collection of the items. So if we go into the Haftara, we have the building of the first Bet HaMikdash in the times of King Solomon, of Shlomo HaMelech. So it's living this week with the building of the Bet HaMikdash, the Mishkan and the Bet HaMikdash. So there's that double portion of building a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's a very, very special Haftara. So let's open it up and find it. I did download it. Here we are. So the Haftara starts towards the end of chapter 5 in Melachim, and then it continues to chapter 6. Okay, the end of chapter 5 is the preparation of the gathering of the merchandise and the instructions of Shlomo HaMelech to the people. And then chapter 6, the starting of the building till almost the end at the Chanukah Habayit of the Mishkan, of the Bet HaMikdash in the times of Shlomo HaMelech. It's a beautiful building. The second Bet HaMikdash was missing some of that splendor and glory, and even some of the precious things that were hidden and were not in the Mishkan, in the second Bet HaMikdash. Bet HaMikdash Shlishi, the third Bet HaMikdash, will be different. It will be, we will mention some of the differences. Before I go in, I'll stop sharing for a minute. I want to give just a timeline, a bit of a timeline of the Haftara, okay? So when was this? Okay, so we have the first build. The parsha teaches us about the building of the tabernacle, and this is many years later. Let me just see. I wrote down. Where did I write down? Okay, so the second Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash was built in the year 2928. 2928, and it was in the 4th year that we will see, the 4th year of his reign, and stood, I think, for 420 years till the destruction. And it took, right after it was built, the Mishkan and all its parts, of course, were buried and put away. Okay. Now, Shlomo HaMelech, was our third king. King Shaul, our first king, Shaul HaMelech, he helped us continue conquering Israel, and where he failed was with Amalek. And then David HaMelech brought us to almost the complete of Eretz Yisrael, and he really wanted to build the Bet HaMikdash, and he asked Hashem, but Hashem told him that being that he was so involved in wars, it's not fitting for him to be the one that builds the Bet HaMikdash, but he's the one that really prepared us the whole Temple Mount and Yerushalayim and everything around, and prepared the way. And we learn when we learn about mitzvahs, we learn that preparing the way is as important as doing the mitzvah itself. And this is what Hashem told David HaMelech and comforted him that it will be his son, King Shlomo HaMelech, and that will do it. And Shlomo HaMelech, his name is from the word shalom. The purpose of the Bet HaMikdash is really to bring peace and shalom in the world. And we see that that's what was the vibe and the during the times of Shlomo HaMelech's reign, there was peace in the world. So we see it in the Haftara as we go along. Okay, so let's start. Where is it? Share. So the first thing he does, as we see at the end of chapter 5, he let's start. And Hashem natan chokhmah leShlomo. Hashem gave Shlomo HaMelech a lot of wisdom. We will soon discuss the differences of Shlomo HaMelech's wisdom and Moshe Rabbeinu. I won't bring the whole discussion that the Gemara goes into, but to understand a little bit and to learn. We will do as we usually do, first learn the Haftara as it goes, and then go back to different details in Chassidus, okay? As he had promised him, Hashem had promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Shlomo HaMelech, and they made a brit together. Now, the first thing King Shlomo does, one of the first things, he puts a mas, how do you say it in English, a levy or a levy? A tax on all the Jewish people.
Levy.
And levy, thank you, Doris.
Levy.
Thank you. And a tax of drafting 30,000 men, okay? And we learned that he wanted everybody to participate. It didn't want to be his personal building of the Bet HaMikdash, but he wanted with the participation of Am Yisrael, and it was shown by those who who were hired or drafted to do the building, and also those who gave money, who were taxed differently than the Truma that we learn in the Mishkan, that it was all voluntary gifts in the times of the desert. Okay, and then he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month. They were a month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. They were getting in Lebanon, there was the quarry, there was also the wood, Atzei HaLevanon. A lot of the wood was from Lebanon. And who was in charge of gathering the levy was a Jew by the name of Adoniram. Okay, we'll soon, according to Chassidus, take apart his name. What does it mean, Adoniram? And it continues, chapter 5, that Shlomo had 70,000 who bore the burdens and 80,000 ewers, right? That's how you say it, ewers or hewers, in the mountains, meaning there was a lot of physical work. We know that Hashem did not allow, and iron was not used in building the Mishkan, and the same in the Bet HaMikdash. They were not allowed to use barzel, iron, to chop or to engrave and to cut the stones. And the stones, whoever was in Yerushalayim, and we all were there, Baruch Hashem, we saw that the stones were humongous stones, and they were not able to cut it or hew it down, I guess, with iron. Okay, let's see what Rashi says. Rashi actually goes into the details that thousands the 1,000 men were in Lebanon in Tishrei, and 20,000 were at home. Chesed, the second 10,000 would alternate and go out to Lebanon and return home. And Kislev, you see how it goes? It explains the rotation of how they did the work, divided the work. And when he says that 70,000 bore the burdens, Rashi explains, to bring the stones from the mountains to the city, and 80,000 were the ones who hewed them in the mountains. There is altogether 150,000 men. And they were Gerim, who were drawn and attracted to the Jewish people, that converted because of Shlomo's greatness in hospitality. Okay, so we learn from here that in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, a lot of people joined the Jewish nation, and because of Shlomo HaMelech's chokhmah and greatness. Okay, it gives all the details, who was in charge and how they worked. This is Rashi. I don't know if we'll go into all that. Okay, they quarried great stones, heavy stones, to lay the foundation of the house with hewn stones. Okay, and Rashi says an interesting thing. They quarried the stones from the mountains. And in one of the commentaries actually explains that because they couldn't use iron, it was done in the Bet HaMikdash, it was done in the mountains already, and it was brought ready, made to the Bet HaMikdash, the chiseling and the carving. Okay, like let's see this next Rashi, when he explains the great stones, the hewn stones. They were carved and chiseled precisely to the required measurements. And if you see sometimes advertisements of people who make furniture, woodcutters and carpenters, that it's done precisely to the measurements in the factory, brought to you ready-made, and whoever did anything with carpenters knows that there's always off a little bit by a quarter of an inch, a little bit, and et cetera, et cetera. And here you see that they did it precisely to the required measurement. And here Rashi says, how was it done? No hammer, axe, or any tool of iron was heard in the house while it was building. How then were the stones cut to a specific size? So Rashi brings the explanation that although no tool of iron was heard in the house while it was building, but he would chisel the stone while still outside and then bring it in and build from inside. Okay, this is according to Masechet Sota, and Rashi adapts this explanation that in the mountains they did use iron to chisel and tune the stones. But we do know also the explanation that Shlomo HaMelech, should I say hired? He didn't hire, but he gathered a shamir. Shamir is like a certain worm that its expertise is to chisel and carve in stone. And it's interesting, there is a short video, should have prepared it to show you, that President Shamir, Prime Minister Shamir, passes by the Rebbe, and it was a very, very tough time during his the time that he was Prime Minister. And the Rebbe told him to be strong because his name is Shamir. Shamir could cut through stone because even though it's small, and actually Shamir was very short, he lived here on near us, Moshe Sharet. I used to see him in the morning going for a walk. And the Rebbe told him, be strong. You know, the Shamir was able to cut through stones in the times of Shlomo HaMelech to build the Bet HaMikdash. Take example and strength from your name. Unbelievable. Okay. And it continues, the Shlomo builders and Hiram's builders, and the Givlim also and they prepared the timber and the stones to build the Bet HaMikdash. Okay, who are the Givlim? A nation whose name was Gival or Gibal. They were skilled in the art of chiseling stones and building. Okay. Now we go into the building itself and the Chanukah Habayit. Okay. It was in the year it was in the 480th year after the Jews left Mitzrayim. We built it 480 years after we came into Eretz Israel. One of the first mitzvahs we have, actually, that when we come into Israel, there's the building of the giving of the Bikurim that we started at least 14, 15 years later after everybody settled, and then bringing a king over us, and then the king is obligated to build the Bet HaMikdash. So here it took 480 years to start keeping the certain mitzvot that we are obligated once we're in Israel. And this was in the 4th year of Shlomo's reign, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month of Shlomo's reign over Israel, and he did begin to build the house of the Lord. Okay. This is, Rashi tells us, Ziv is Iyar, was in Iyar. Ziv means bloom, because in Iyar, the month after Nisan, 2nd month, it is, that's when the trees start blooming. Okay, in the 4th year of his reign. Okay. And now it gives all the details that I think we'll just like skim over. Everything in Chassidut and Kabbalah teaches us something, but I'm not going to stop today on all that. But we should know that. The length, the height, the porch, how long it was, from north to south. Okay. And he made for the house windows, broad without and narrow within. Now, this is an unbelievable, one short little verse that teaches us so many lessons. And the Rebbe stops on this a lot. What is it? Broad from within, from out, and narrow within. Okay? What does it mean? How was it built? So our sages explain, shkufim is an expression of looking and opening and observation. These windows were constructed that they were open on the outside and closed on the inside. The opening was wider on the outside and narrow on the inside. This was not the usual manner of all other windows, which are made expressively for illumination. Let me stop for a second. Usually windows are made narrow on the outside and broad on the inside. So the light could come into the house and light it, but it blocks the ray of the sun. But it brings in the light. If you go into, you see the mitzada in different walls and in the old city, the windows sometimes are a little slit and they're wide inside and outside. If this is the outside wall, it's narrow. Bet HaMikdash was the other way around, narrow on the outside and wide, narrow on the inside and wide on the outside, because the purpose was for the Bet HaMikdash to not bring in the light, but actually to illuminate the world. And this is what the Rebbe always talks about, that we should be like the windows of the Bet HaMikdash. wider towards the outside and narrow towards the inside into ourselves. I think I have it written down here, a quote from the Rebbe. Let me just see, so I could give you the, here. The Rebbe says the following: the windows of the buildings were typically built wider on the inside in order to diffuse the entering sunlight throughout the room. In contrast, the temple windows were built wide on the outside so it could spread light to the outside. Okay, this is taken from, the Rashi we just read, and other places. This was an expression of the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash in general, and the menorah. Rebbe stops on it a lot when he talks about the menorah, in particular, because the idea of the menorah was to light up the world, but it was inside. How could it light up the world? It was in the courtyard. How could it light the world? So the Rebbe explained, because the windows were made in such a way that the light of the Beit HaMikdash just lit and illuminated all the surroundings outside, to spread the light of divine consciousness towards the whole world. Furthermore, the 7 lamps atop the temple candelabra signify the 7 types of Jewish souls, emphasizing the 7 midot. So there were 7 lamps, 7 lights, love, which symbolize the 7 midot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchut. Therefore, the design of the temple windows indicates to each one of us that our ultimate purpose is to shine our unique divinity outwards in order to enlighten the world and guide it towards the true fulfillment of the divine purpose. This is taken from the Kutei Sichot, volume 2. Okay, the purpose of from within going out. Right, and it continues here more. The building of the walls around, different extensions. Okay, and then it says, Vayas, and he made, as you see, Vayas laot saviv, and he made chambers around, like a veranda, rooms around. And Rashi says a beautiful thing, Kmo asa, it's like he made, likewise, he was my salvation. Vayi li Yeshua, Yeshua is also from the word asa, he was my salvation. The Beit HaMikdash was a Yeshua. And then goes more into the details of the building of the Beit HaMikdash. It's fascinating to read all the details, and we know that every detail is very, very important, and we can't change. And here's what we mentioned before. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, finished at the quarry, and there were neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was building. And here is where Rashi talks about the shamir, when it was in building of stone, finished at the quarry, as it was removed from the mountain through the worm shamir, which cuts through stones. Exactly as it came from there, they set it into the walls of construction, and they did not chisel it further with any metal tools. Okay. Okay, and then it talks about the doors. Really goes in, and the winding stairs. There was a staircase because there was another floor on top. Okay. And he built the house and finished it. We all know, whoever lives in Israel and tried to build a house or do things, the finishing part is the most difficult. All the kablanim and all the workers say, Ani achzor, I'll finish it. I could tell you, I did a few chiputzim, as they call it here in Israel, refurbishing, fixing up, and there was always the last parts that were never finished. Till this day, promises of coming back to finish this hinge and this straightening out. It could take 30, 40 years. They don't come back. So when the Torah says, and he finished it, it's a very big thing. And he covered the house with paneling and joint planks of cedar. Arazim. Say arazim. Okay. And here we see that there were two, the house, it was a double roof. There were two roofs, two ceilings, one made for beauty below, and then one of planks of cedar that was above. A lot of things to learn from here. Okay, he's talking about the planks of cedar that were covered. And he built the chambers against all the house, meaning around it, and he covered the house with timber of cedar. They came from Lebanon. Okay. And here's towards the last two psukim. And Hashem, Vayehi dvar Hashem el Shlomo leimor. And Hashem said to Shlomo the following: Habayit hazeh, this house which you are building, asher ata boneh, im telech bechukotai vet mishpatai taseh. If you walk according to my chukim, statutes, and execute my mitzvot, keep my mitzvot, and keep all my commandments, to walk in them, lalechet bahem. That's why it's called halacha, to walk in the mitzvot, a constant halacha. Then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to you, David, your father. Hashem promised David HaMelech, but the promise to keep, we need Am Yisrael to keep the Torah mitzvot. V'shachanti betoch b'nei Israel, and I will dwell amongst the Jewish people. V'lo azov et ami Israel, and I will never leave the Jewish people. This is like the final two psukim. So let's go back a little bit to some of the details that we just skimmed over and stopped here and there, to learn it a little bit more in depth. Let's see. So, it starts about Shlomo's chokhmah, his knowledge, his wisdom. What do we have? Where is it? Pasuk that we have here. It tells us that God granted Natan, Shlomo, wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace. Okay, so what we have here are mifashim about Shlomo. Okay, so do you mind if I read it straight from the Chayenu to you? I'll bring you the discussion that he says. Hashem promised Shlomo a wise, this is in a previous chapter, which chapter? Chapter 3, we're doing chapter 5, a wise and understanding heart. We have that in our parsha, that the women had chokhmat lev. The women had wisdom of the heart. Wisdom is in the mind, but it has to be brought down to the heart. So Hashem promised Shlomo HaMelech a wise and understanding heart, so that there will never, and there in the 3rd chapter he says, there will that there will never have been anyone like you previously, nor will anyone like you ever arise, which actually throws a question. Moshe Rabbeinu was very smart. So this is a discussion amongst our Chachamim. And later, in another source, it says, where? In Kings 5, before, it tells us that he became wiser than any person. So it's a question. We have someplace else in the Torah that tells us, in that discussion, chapter 3 of Kings, that there was no prophet in Israel like Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Talmud takes us, the Gemara takes us to a discussion between Rav and Shmuel. According to Rav, Moshe Rabbeinu's Chachma was superior to Shlomo, and that Hashem's promise to Shlomo only meant that no one more other than Moshe Rabbeinu will surpass Shlomo HaMelech. According to Shmuel, it means that Moshe's level of prophecy was greater than Shlomo, but Shlomo's wisdom, Chachma, Shlomo HaMelech's Chachma, surpassed Moshe Rabbeinu's Chachma. The Medrash actually says that Shlomo HaMelech's Chachma surpassed Moshe. And Rashi, what we read before, also states that, okay, we mentioned before. Now, the Rambam says that Hashem only promised Shlomo HaMelech that he would be the wisest in his generation. But Moshe Rabbeinu was smarter. The Radak, which is Reb David Kimchi, the Radak says, Hashem only promised Shlomo that he would be the wisest king, but not the wisest person. Okay, so you see that there is a different opinions, and I quoted in their names, so we should know who are the people who are saying it. Now, if we want to go into a Kabbalistic level, the Zohar is discussing here the word Chochma. We as Chabadnikim know that there's Chochma, there's Bina, and there's Dat, 3 levels of wisdom. Bina is more understanding, is more actually of a feminine trait. It's taking, Chochma is a Dat, an idea, a spark, a wow. And then Bina builds it. We're talking here about building. Builds it, starts giving it a shape and details, more understanding. You know, you could go, wow, that's such a great idea. And then somebody will say, explain it to me. Okay, and then Dat brings it down into actuality. So the Zohar discusses the contradiction of all the other that we brought up till now, that Radak, Rav, Shmuel, the Medrash, Rashi, and he says, Moshe's wisdom was actually Bina. He taught us the Torah, he explained it to us. As like Hashem says, so like it's written in the Talmud, in the Gemara, that what Hashem granted to Shlomo was lesser Bina. It was a different type of Chochma. It was a Chochma of Malchut. He was king, he was Melech, which is a lower level of Chochma. Shlomo sought to use this lesser Chochma to achieve a higher Chochma, but he didn't get to that higher level of Chochma. Like he himself says, I will achieve Chochma, but it proved to be beyond me. Okay, that he says, I think, in Kohelet. Let me just check where he says that. I think he says it in Kohelet. Yes, in Kohelet. He says that Chokhmah also was hard to achieve. It's a different type of Chokhmah. He was able to achieve Chokhmah of Malchut, but not Chokhmah of a higher level. This is what's written in the Zohar. Okay. Now on the next verse that we get is we have also depth of his raising a Levi out of all the Jewish people, and not only in money, but also in drafting the people. So according to the Radak that we mentioned before, he's a Parshan on the Navi, he says, this was not a tax to pay salary. It was a tax of drafting, conscription of workers. According to Jewish law, a king is authorized to draft his subjects for compulsive service as he deems necessary. King is allowed, and he's authorized to draft the people for work that he feels that is necessary. On a deeper level, King Shlomo HaMelech did this to every Jew, to everybody, not just collectively, but individually, because he felt, which we all know, that actually every Jew is obligated to build a Bet HaMikdash. So he wanted something from everybody. There could be a collective, as Am Yisrael donated, but then the individual donation, it's more than a donation, active way of contributing and doing something for the Bet HaMikdash. So what he did was he got representatives from the entire nation. It's not the entire nation, but it's big numbers. As we saw, 30,000, every 10,000 changed, and then there was 70,000. It was all like groups of representatives from every group of people that everybody, participated in that representation in order to feel that they built part of the Bet HaMikdash. And the Rebbe says in in Sefer Maimarim, it's written, and I'll quote here from Sefer Maimarim, the individual obligation to build the temple, the Beis HaMikdash, concerns not only the physical Bet HaMikdash, but the inner Bet HaMikdash, that we each have to construct in our personal lives. We construct this by making a commitment to keep Torah and mitzvahs to the best of our ability. Okay. Okay, and we spoke about the windows, that the windows also teaches us the idea of shining outside. Okay, let me see from another source that I brought here. One second, please. Okay. All right. Remember the name of that person? I remember I had something else to be prepared. What was the name of the person in charge? See, he goes into the details. When we learn Chassidus, it's the stones represent a certain, the inanimate things. Everything represents a certain type of avoda, a certain type of part of this world that was brought to the Bet HaMikdash and thereby elevating the stones, the gold, the silver, which is the purpose of our keeping Torah and mitzvahs, to start to elevate everything that's in this world, is to show also that everything that's in this world can be elevated. Is it here? No. Everything in this world can and should be elevated to Avodat Hashem, to bring out the sparks in everything. Okay, so we have here interesting, in the middle of everything, it tells us the name of the person who was in charge of collecting the Levi. It says, and he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month, alternately. A month they were in Lebanon and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the Levi. Okay, Rashi does not tell us anything about his name, but Hasidus does. Okay, so the question in Hasidus is the following. Kabbalah teaches us, when Hashem created the world, the spiritual sparks fell into the physical world and it became trapped, right? That's what we learn in Kabbalah, that there's nitzotzot shel gedusha, sparks of gedusha in this world. Our life's challenge is to extract those sparks and to bring them to the source. How do we do it? By keeping Torah mitzvahs. I taught this yesterday to two new women that I met, and it was like a wow moment of whatever we do and use physical things, we're actually extracting the sparks that's in these physical things. And now he brings an interesting question. An interesting question is whether the difficulty in elevating these sparks, we have a difficulty in elevating the sparks. Where does it stem from? Does it stem from our psychological barrier, our evil inclination, our Yetzer Hara, or where the sparks themselves resist elevation? Sometimes we have a hard time doing something. Is it because the sparks don't want to leave the physical world or be elevated? They don't have to leave the physical world. They don't physically go up. They are elevated. Does it come from that? Or does it come from us? Our Yetzer Hara says, no, you don't have to do it. You don't have to make a bracha, or you don't have to use this, something like that. So he said, let me just tell you, I'm reading this from the Chayenu. This is from Maimer. No, sorry. This is from a Sikha of the Rebbe. Actually, no. Yeah, some Sikha from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe explains like this. The Torah gives us the answer. When the Torah tells us that Adoniram was the name of the person in charge of the Levi, and the Levi is what caused the work. And he says it's really made up of two words, Adoni Ram. Adoni is my master. Ram al kol goim Hashem is exalted. Yes, Ram is exalted, alluding to the elevation of the sparks which reconnect to the godliness that is trapped in the world, where Hashem is Adoni, is the master, and he is Ram, he's exalted. The sparks are exalted. The fact that Adoniram was in charge of the Levi, which is a compulsory tax, indicates that from the sparks' perspective, elevation must occur. They want Adoniram. My master is exalted. They want to be. Thus, it follows that the only obstacle to this elevation is to be found within the person. So the job is ours. The sparks, it's like the sparks in the world are screaming, use me to serve Hashem. You have a nice tablecloth, use me for Shabbat. You have a nice picture, put it on a Shabbat table, make a bracha. You know, you're walking in the street, say a pasuk, lift up the sparks that are on the ground or in the environment. You know, we went through this week a lot of pollution since last Shabbos. It's already a week. So much sand. It's as if the world is saying, clean me out. That's how I felt. When I walked in the street on Shabbos and it was so heavy, the sand, it was like sand in your mouth. I said, you know what? They're waiting for, they came down because they want to be elevated. So I said psukim the whole way to shul to purify the environment. So Adoni Ram is telling us God is exalted. In these stones, he's there. They have to be, they're waiting. And we have that job. That's why thousands of people were used. Everybody has to find a different part of the sparks that are in different parts of the physical being. I thought it was such a beautiful depth. And okay. I also wanted to bring another point. What will be in the Bet HaMikdash HaShlishi? We see that iron wasn't used, not in the Mishkan, not in the Bet HaMikdash HaRishon, and not in the Bet HaMikdash HaShlishi. So the Rebbe brings in a sicha of Asara B'Tevet that talks about the destruction, that we commemorate the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the beginning of the siege and the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. He says, we know based on this pasuk, which pasuk is it, about not using iron, right? We did read that pasuk. Here, right? Neither hammer nor axe, any tool of iron. So the Rebbe says like this. The third Bet HaMikdash will be built in Mashiach's time, when the forces of evil will be transformed to good. Therefore, it will appear that iron will be used in the construction of the third Bet HaMikdash. If we're talking about bringing out the sparks, even on iron that was used for war and to kill, and therefore the two first Bet HaMikdash were not built with that. But the Rebbe says it seems that because the evil will not be there, it will be transformed. Perhaps even as part of the building itself. In fact, even in the second Bet HaMikdash, which was a Hagdama of the third, there was at least some use of iron, because the Bet HaMikdash, the Hashmonaim built a menorah. The first menorah was hidden, and they built a menorah, and they also built of iron, and they also, and not of gold, and they also built a bird trap on the roof, which was made of iron. So it's like a Hagdama to the building of the third Bet HaMikdash. So the Rebbe asks, how are we to transform iron from a symbol of destruction to one of good? That's the Rebbe's question. How will we transform this iron? So the Rebbe says, our Chachamim tell us that any Torah scholar who is not as strong as iron is not a Torah scholar. This is a quote from Masechet Ta'anit, which, you know, we studied before fast day, and the Rebbe said this on a fast day, Asara B'Tevet, meaning through our unbending, being strong as iron, and uncompromising commitment to Torah under all circumstances, we prove that being hard and brittle can be a good thing. So iron, by us showing that we are as strong as iron, actually is paving the way that iron could be used in building the third Bet HaMikdash. So therefore, the lesson of today's class is we should do anything we can to reveal the sparks of Kedusha in this world. It's our shlichut. And we should learn the Haftarah with the details and feel as if we're building in our heart, and our hearts are like windows to shine out to the world and transfer everything that is negative into positive, so Mashiach could come down with the Bet HaMikdash HaShlishi from heaven, and we will just have to put the mezuzahs and, the final touches of the fresh flowers and polish the door handles. It will be a very, very computerized, probably, Bet HaMikdash with the new technology of the lights going in and on, and with the Shabbat mode, everything instantly. It's interesting how they call the new cards. All the machines now have a kartis chacham. You could have a perfectly running machine, but the kartis chacham, everything. I had a dishwasher. It was still with the plastic around it. It worked fantastically for a year. It was shining, clean, everything. But the kartis chacham blew. I had to get a new machine. Before the class started, I just want to share, I fixed myself because I like doing these things. Our hot water thing, we have a Tami Arba that has a Kartis Chacham that has a calendar inside, goes off before Shabbos, goes on according to Rabbeinu Tam after Shabbos, but the cold water was not working. And whoever I called, they said, tzchim lachlif, you have to change it. The Kartis Chacham probably blew, or the part that there's the cold water, it blew. This morning I said to my husband, what should we do? It's not working. So he says, you know what? I guess we don't have insurance on it. It's time to buy another one. And I don't give up on these things. My husband went out. I took it a little bit apart, and guess what? It works. We have cold water. Baruch Hashem. So sometimes we could be smarter than the Kartis Chacham. That's what Hashem wants us to reveal our chokhmah in a way to serve Hashem, like Shlomo HaMelech. Anyway, everybody have a great week. And
we're listening to today, not waiting till tomorrow.
What did you say?
I said it was worth listening today and not waiting till tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Dorothy and Malka pushed it for it. Even though you were both very nice and accommodating, willing to do tomorrow. I wanted to see.
Well, as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm leaving to England for a short visit for a vote of my grandson.
Oh,
okay,
wow. Mazal tov. Give regards to my mechutanim, the Jaffies.
Well, this time in London, not Manchester.
Okay.
Well,
take care, everybody. Have a great Shabbos, a great
week. Thank you, Esther. Good Shabbos.
Next
Thank
week is
you.
Thursday.
That was great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. Bye. Bye, Esther.
Bye.
Take care.